Alright, so I really didn't want to have to do this, but we have to expose yet another really predatory sort of environment that is occurring on Roblox and off platform as well that has to involve unpaid and child labor. So we're gonna get straight into it because why is this so common? Very bizarre, very weird. And I was actually personally a victim of this kind of behavior too when I was younger. And this made me remember memories that I thought I didn't have. But regardless, we're gonna get straight into it. So if you guys don't know, previously I've talked about this issue quite a bit, more specifically with Dressed Impress Discord servers. Now I do want to clarify again, those Discord servers are not run by Dressed Impress, they are run by community members and people who aren't correlated to the game. However, a lot of those Dressed Impress Discord servers, as I mentioned in a previous video, were actively profiting off of the free child labor and were actively being verbally abused towards children. So it's a whole messed up situation. And after I post that video, you would not believe the amount of DMs I got from people who were victimized by that exact server or similar servers. And there was one DM that I received in particular that I thought was very interesting. And this one has to do with another game on Roblox in a different niche that is just as, if not more toxic than the Dressed Impress Discord servers. Now, a quick little disclaimer, this person asked that they do not be named for safety reasons. I will not be naming them. And also they did give me the cafe name because this is a cafe game on Roblox, which I had my own experiences with, but I won't be sharing the name because I don't feel like outing a specific game is going to help. More so, I'm just trying to show you guys the issue, and this is something that occurs actually in a lot of different games, and a lot of things that this person highlighted were things that I experienced in another cafe game. So it seems like this is more so just a general way that people seem to treat each other in these games, which is very bizarre, but we're going to get straight into it. Now, her message, or I don't know their pronouns, I'm going to assume, I'll just say they. Their message was, "Hi Pommy, after your recent post about the Dressed Impress farming servers, I thought I'd ask you to speak about an industry that is quite similar in nature, the Roblox cafe industry. For the purpose of my privacy, I kindly request that you do not release my username or else I would literally be flamed by the group. The group I worked at is blank, however you may feel free to censor the name if appropriate," which I'm just going to censor it. That being said, let me give a brief introduction of the structure of Roblox cafes. So to very quickly skim through this, there's a bunch of different ranks. The lower ranks are the people who work the servers, the baristas, waiters, etc. Middle ranks are referred to as MRs, I guess, in this game, which is the management team, where they do supervising, hosting training sessions, answer questions, and they're kind of the peacekeepers, I guess, is how this person described it. And then the third one is the high ranks, which are HRs, though they're part of the human resources team and the public relations team. And this varies by game, so keep that in mind. This may not be the same across all games. In the group I work at, HRs were part of the management team, and the actual people in charge were the corporate and presidential team. That being said, let's firstly start with the toxic work culture. When you work at these games, you typically have requirements you must fulfill by the end of the week or consequences will follow, which that's such an ominous thing. If you don't do enough free labor for us, you're gonna be in the doghouse. What the? The consequences given for not finishing the requirements is different for each group, but for me, it was a warning. 3 warnings equals a termination. Uh-oh, guys, I wouldn't want to be terminated for my job where I'm not getting paid. That would suck. It's so bizarre how they hold these things over people's heads. Very bizarre. The requirements were extremely demanding. For the lowest management rank, which was a bakery assistant, the requirements were 100 minutes and 3 sessions attended. Keep in mind, training sessions are held at specific times, but imagine over 30 people trying to complete these requirements. It was virtually impossible to get a spot at a training session. The most annoying thing is that only specific ranks can host, and due to the time zone, sometimes the only sessions I could attend were the ones at 3 a.m. EST or 9 p.m. EST, but because most of the team is EST, no one would host the later sessions. I had to resort to staying up until 3 a.m. to complete requirements. Not to mention, you also want a promotion into the next rank, so you're also actively trying to exceed the requirements. There was 1 week where I had 17 out of 3 sessions attended, over 300 minutes, and still did not receive a promotion. I will later get into the bias surrounding promotions, which that is insane. Due to the stress I face as a university student, I follow an Asian schooling system where I'm up at 5 a.m. and get back at home at 9 p.m. and still have to study. I resort to having to study on the side while in this game. These industries are so incredibly toxic and push literal children to their limits and cause burnout, all in hopes of gaining a promotion. To clarify, I am of age, but still the system definitely took a toll on my mental health. Which, a super quick introduction here, I think, sometimes people think that, well, if you're not a child, then you can't be taken advantage of, and that certainly is really far from the truth. The reason I mainly try to focus on the child labor portion of these kind of issues is particularly because children don't necessarily understand labor laws to the fullest extent, and they don't have, necessarily the connections to understand that they're being mistreated, whereas adults typically have more connections and more understanding of how they can be properly compensated. But regardless, anybody, regardless of their age, can be taken advantage of, and I certainly think that's what's happening here, which is really unfortunate and just gross. Why can't games pay people? It's very bizarre. They go on to say, now to talk about the problem, the corporate team or those in charge, these individuals have for sure worked hard to get where they are, but they also have huge inflated egos, huge egos. Sometimes to use certain commands, we have to ping them and ask for permission. I don't know about you, but it just seems so weird to ask someone for permission to ban a user who's spamming NSFW content in a kid's game. Goody. This system just seems to be highly authoritative. The corporate team also actively engages in talking horribly about other middle ranks. I have personally experienced this with 2 corporates who I'll call Jane and Iris, not their real names. I would constantly meet Jane and she would actively ignore me while responding to other corporate members. Iris was worse. One time while I was getting promoted, which happens in the management chat, which was a huge moment for me and how hard I have worked, Iris was chatting the very same chat at the very same moment and did not congratulate me whatsoever. Am I saying everyone needs to congratulate me? No, I don't have that type of ego. But when it was a big moment for someone and you're actively witnessing it and just ignore it, that's rude. She also has ignored me multiple times in efforts to say hello to her. There are screenshots of other corporate members, namely the public relations co-lead, calling people disgusting things. The co-owner has also built a club at the main game. What the? Given that most of our demographic are children who can barely type, this is just extremely predatory behavior. The worst part is, there is evidence of all this in the management chat. However, out of the blue, the presidentials decided to delete the old management chat and replace it with a new one. This is just a blatant attempt to hide evidence. The worst part is that was after an exposed document was made about the group that contained the very same things I was talking about. Which, like, I think the biggest red flag in any Discord server is when you're like chatting somewhere and then all of a sudden the channel goes missing. And that to me is like a red flag that, oh, they didn't want something in this chat getting out. So instead of just like trying to like clean the chat, they're just gonna private it so they protect all the information, which is like really creepy. And of course, I want to clarify this is just this person's experience. However, as somebody who on my crusty dusty little iPad, I was playing cafe games at like 12 years old, and there's this one game that I worked at, I'm not going to say the name, but it was like I think at the time they only did drinks. I think now they do like desserts and stuff, which is like, again, pixelated items. But I used to play this game and I was like illiterate at 12 years old. I was a really bad typer and I would get screamed at by people for not like typing well enough. And I say screamed at because I was like in the Discord server and I would join a voice call to have like a meeting and they would like get mad at me. I'm like, whoa, I'm like 12. I'm not even old enough to be on the platform. Sorry, my bad, guys. I'm a rebel. And then afterwards, I was banned, where I was fired, guys. Fired from my non-paying job, God forbid, at 12 years old. And I was fired because I wasn't typing fast enough, which my bad. I can't type a whole essay in 2 seconds, okay? I'm on my iPad. But I got fired, and then after that I had like an issue with the game ever since then, and I was like really, honestly, I was really angry that they fired me because I was a kid. And so I made it my mission for several years after that with my friends that every night we would like log on to like random restaurant or cafe games that we heard were toxic towards our workers, and I would go in and like stand on the table where people are eating and just dance. Like I wasn't even like saying terrible things or being a horrible person. I would just dance, and there was always like, get the higher ups in here, someone call HR, someone call HR. And it was just really funny, which I know like I guess like indirectly inconvenience people, which sorry to anybody that was victimized by that. But I don't know. I think these games shouldn't exist in my opinion. I think they're very predatory and very creepy. And yeah, I'm basically banned from like a lot of the cafe games because I used to dance on the tables, which like wasn't even that big of a deal. They'd just be like, ma'am, get down, ma'am, get down. And I just like wouldn't answer and I just keep like doing the Roblox dance. This person goes on to say, now let's talk about the bias in promotions. The human resource team always say that you don't need to exceed your requirements a lot, which is just a lie, because if you don't, you can kiss that promotion goodbye. Some people get promoted after 2 weeks, while some people, like including me, who have worked hard for a month plus are yet to receive recognition. The human resources team always says you can DM them for feedback as to why you're not getting promoted. But whenever I did, they respond with, no feedback, keep it up. Like, bro, okay, give me the promotion then. Which is valid. I've also noticed that usually the close friends of HRD, Human Resources Department, are the ones that receive the promotions quickest. If for some reason HRD does not like you, no matter how hard you work, you will likely have to work 3 times as hard as everyone else, which is just extremely toxic. So not only are they actually profiting off of child labor and unpaid labor of everybody who works in the game, they're also actively participating in nepotism, where they play favorites, which, like, okay, nepotism it's present everywhere in the world, but at least don't lie to kids and tell them, oh guys, if you work really hard, you'll get a promotion, and then just blatantly lie to their face. Like, what are you doing? You know, it's very, very weird, but the worst part about these industries is that while we're in game for 100 plus minutes, the owner is making profit, especially from premium users. The management team is completely unpaid, but sure, you can argue it's voluntary, but as mentioned in the Dressed in Press video, a lot of it is about status. You feel respected as an MR. Everyone wants to be MR. It's like the ultimate goal. This also goes for the immense admiration management members have towards corporate members. This is the ultimate goal, and unfortunately just creates an overall toxic environment, which again, Yeah, I talked about this in the Dressed and Pressed video, where kids and adults alike, and especially I find, well, at least my experience when I worked on that cafe game as like literally being exploited for my child labor, was that there was actually quite a lot of people on the team who had developmental delays. And not to say that, you know, that meant that those are the only people they were hiring, but it just added an extra level of ickiness when you have somebody who maybe isn't neurotypical or doesn't understand like the cues of this is inappropriate, this is not nice. And it was always like they would use them as punching bags and were just really, really, really nasty to anybody with any sort of disability. It was very, very bizarre. And honestly, it just kind of adds like a weird level of just predatory behavior to these kind of games that really irks me. It makes me upset. To also highlight bias, I once reported a user to the management team who was admitted to committing a very serious crime. Won't go into detail, but you can imagine that if it got to the extent I had to report it, it created just an unsafe environment for everyone, especially people in the team who were freshly 13 years old. This doesn't sound like a very good thing this person did. When I reported the instance, I then received a warning for starting/participating in drama when the individual had gone over 3 days without being terminated or banned. I don't know about you, but if there's someone on my team who actively endangered everyone else, I would 100% ban them. This report also contained adequate proof, so why was I warned? I'm unsure. I shortly resigned from my position and left the group for good after this drama. Also, to add, the application used to count our minutes in log session is called this application allows HRD to see the location of your account and where we live, which is extremely unsafe. I can't imagine if they can see your IP as well, or just your country, but either way, it's uncomfortable for a bunch of randoms to know where you live. I will attach screenshots of everything down below. I will blur out usernames or details that give away too much. So there's like a weekly requirement thing. And allegedly, these are screenshots that they shared. Allegedly, this is like stuff that management or some like people in the higher up team are saying. It says presidential team talking bad about others and fat shaming. That fat C word resigned. F fat B words. Whoa, are you guys okay? Like, Jesus. Progress towards goal is 300%. She was saying bye, help. That's so hot. Pay me now. Okay, mommy. What the? This is so bizarre. And they said, here's the document, but I wouldn't really use it. Most of it is pure bullying instead of actually doing justice to those who harmed mentally by this group. And so there's an exposed document that was released actually like somewhat recently about the group. And they said, thanks so much for taking the time to review this. If you have anything you'd like me to include, please do not hesitate to let me know. Please also know to give me credits in the description, as I will be identifying information. I'm not trying to be flamed. So obviously, this is incredibly concerning. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily recognize the different levels to mistreatment of people on the Roblox platform, because they just assume, oh, it's black and white. And people typically identify mistreatment or exploitative behavior as being stuff like what Schlep identifies on his channel, right? Which is that kind of content, right? However, this kind of stuff is just, if not, I would say just as bad. And although it's not exactly the same sort of behaviors and the same sort of trauma that players are developing, it still creates this very unhealthy connection with the internet, where children are then put in a position, and different people as well, are put in a position where they are actually being victimized, and it ruins their mental health, making them vulnerable to other malicious activity from people online. And what's creepy about this too is, I don't know like the whole legal system. I'm not trying to act like I'm a lawyer or anything like that, but I know certain areas like the European Union, they have some pretty strict regulations regarding child internet safety and privacy. And I'm not trying to go out here and speculate, but I'm just like curious and genuine question. How does this application that allegedly tracks your location and is tracking your time in this game, how does that comply with those regulations? Because I'm thinking of like laws in like the US and Canada and stuff like that, and they've really been cracking down on child safety, specifically like the collection of child data and stuff like that under COPPA. And this just seems kind of like, in my opinion, violating that. I don't know the full scope of that. They didn't really go too much into detail, and because I don't have first-hand experience, I don't want to go and act like I'm a pro at this or I fully understand it, but it just seems very like red flaggy and bizarre to me, and generally is incredibly concerning. What's also concerning is, like I previously mentioned, a lot of these groups will have people in them that are children, that have maybe disabilities, developmental delays, that are neurodivergent, or even just adults who just, want to be included in Roblox stuff, and they actively take advantage of people's insecurities, people wanting to fit in. They take advantage of people having no friends and make them feel like they have a community in this game, and that if they don't do certain things, they're going to be shunned, they're going to be banned, they're going to be kicked out, and they won't have the opportunity to come back. And it's just incredibly toxic. And again, as somebody who is on the side of trolling in these games, rabbit dance in the tables, and also as somebody who, worked at this cafe and was fired at the ripe age of 12 years old, I think this is something that has been going on for quite a long time. And what's really like scary to me is that this happened when I was younger, obviously. And the fact that it's still happening, and I would say like to a much higher degree where it's much more concerning. Like what I went through is not nearly as bad as what this person's describing, but it's just really alarming because this has been going on for several years at this point, and Roblox has made, to my understanding, little to no effort to regulate this stuff. And I think that when players, or especially kids or, you know, other individuals, are highly encouraged to do free labor with the promise of rewards such as promotions or being recognized or popularity, and then those rewards being actively withheld from them in the case of nepotism, it's just very weird, and it's misleading. And I'll be honest, not trying to get too legal here, but I feel like a lot of these cafe games, not necessarily speaking to this one directly, but a lot of these games are like actually violating labor laws in certain countries and are actually, you know, victimizing kids and just different individuals. And I think it's really creepy and definitely something that shouldn't be supported. And I'm gonna be honest, who plays cafe games? Sorry, maybe I'm being like, I don't know, too out there with that, but genuinely, like, ever since, like, I can't imagine like ever actually like playing a cafe game. Like, I worked for the game because I heard that, oh, you can actually make Robux eventually, and that's like what I wanted. They said once you got to like a high enough rank, you could make Robux, but then I had to like buy this uniform for Robux, so I lost Robux and never actually got promoted to a higher rank because I was fired. So I just wasted a bunch of Robux on these uniforms. And what was even weird about it was this group was constantly switching their uniforms and remaking them. And so I literally spent like hundreds of Robux buying new uniforms because they'd be like, oh guys, this week we have a new uniform, and if you don't buy it, then you're gonna be fired because you have to match the team. And it was just like the most like bizarre kind of situation. It feels dystopian, like it just feels like not real. But regardless, this is incredibly concerning and honestly really creepy. And I think a lot of people just think that, oh, exploitative behavior on Roblox happens in ways where it's adults preying on kids, but that isn't always the case. Adults can also be victimized by this. People who are neurodivergent, maybe people with developmental delays, children, they can all be victimized by this kind of behavior. And it's incredibly concerning how normalized it is and how these owners are actually profiting off of kids and other individuals doing free labor in their games. Without people working at your restaurant game is dead. Ain't nobody want to join your restaurant game to sit there and not get served. You know what I mean? So like, it's just very bizarre to me that they're going to actively be mistreating people allegedly who are working for them for free and spending their time, and then have these really strict requirements. Like, that's just very bizarre to me. But regardless, let me know your thoughts in this comment section below. Do you guys have experience working for cafe games or ever joining a cafe game? I'm gonna be honest, after I was fired, I became a troll. And I wasn't like a mean troll or anything. I never said anything. I would just dance on the table so they couldn't eat. But regardless, let me know your thoughts in this in the comment section below, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye!